إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهديه الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We continue inshallah ta'ala with Kitab At-Tawheed, and before we read the chapter which is the title of it باب ما جاء أن بعض هذه الأمة تعبد الأوثان, I remind myself and everyone to be patient when it comes to seeking knowledge. العلم الشرعي, the religious knowledge, requires patience, requires striving and struggling, because you would find all kinds of things that distract you from it, whether it's from matters of materialistic things of this life or from even those who would claim that they are for the deen. They would belittle the matter to the people. يُزَهِّدُونَ النَّاسَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. They make them have zuhd when it comes to ilm. This is not the most important thing at this time. The most important thing in this time is to do this and to do that and raise your voice in this and be active in this and that, and then leading people astray. The fitna that we're having nowadays, it's because of the ignorance and other things. So to lift this ignorance is with ilm. And al-ilm is not what we think that is benefiting or not, is al-ilm al-nafi', the benefiting knowledge that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. This ilm ma'soom, is infallible, does not have any mistakes in it, and to know it and to know the ways of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as it's in the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, exactly the way that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum and the Tabi'een and Salaf al-Salih understood this message and understood this wahy. Otherwise, people can bring all kinds of evidences and people might think that they're upon ilm. So you have to have the patience to learn and to seek definitely the ulama and to ask the people of knowledge before we do anything, especially with this nawazil that affects the ummah. It's left to individuals, those who have no ilm or degrees. These things does not make a person a alim. So to refer to kibar ahl al-ilm, to the major ulama, and we have to listen. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And for one another to learn the foundation of the deen, then this definitely is the wajib, the obligation of the time that we're in. To be patient with that, as we said. Salaf al-Salih, whenever the fitan afflicts them, or times of fitan, they would sit in the masjid and read Sahih al-Bukhari, Muslim, for example. What is that to do with things? This is what we are in need to act upon the ilm, not act upon emotions and things of that nature. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us sincerity, inshallah ta'ala. So the title of the chapter, باب ما جاء أن بعض هذه الأمة تعبد الأوثان. The translation of it, inshallah.
Chapter number 23. Some people of this ummah, nation, will worship idols.
وقوله تعالى ألم تر إلى الذين أوتوا نصيبا من الكتاب يؤمنون بالجبت والطاغوت ويقولون للذين كفروا هؤلاء أهدى من الذين آمنوا سبيلا.
Allah the Most Exalted said, have you not seen those who were given a portion of the scripture? They believe in al-jibt and at-taghut, all false deities, and say to the disbelievers that they are better guided as regards to the way than the believers, Muslims.
So this chapter, ما جاء, as it's repeated before, what came as far as evidences are concerned. This is what is meant by ما جاء, because al-maji, when something comes, either something physical or non-physical matter. So this refers to what came in the wahy, in the Quran and in the Sunnah of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. أن بعض هذه الأمة, that some of this ummah, the ummah of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام, and what he means by the ummah is ummatul da'wah, because the ummah is of two categories. Ummat al-ijaba, because you have ummat al-da'wah is the entire human beings. They are the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, since he was sent ﷺ, because he was sent to all mankind. But those who accepted the message of the Prophet ﷺ, some of them that ta'bud al-awthan, that they would worship al-awthan, and al-awthan is the plural of wathan, which is the idol, anything that is being worshipped besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he mentioned 3 verses and 2 or 3 hadith that refers to this meaning. And before we go further, what is meant by this is that this is something that is going to happen. It doesn't mean that this is a takfir to the ummah, some of the ummah. That this is something is going to happen, that some of the ummah would worship idols. This is something that is very clear. And that's why there's warnings when it comes to warn against shirk, against kufr. Why is the warning is there? Unless there is some would fall into shirk wal-'iyadhu billah and kufr. And we'll see inshallah ta'ala with the evidences. The first ayah, as we heard in Surah An-Nisa, ayah number 51, أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا نَصِيبًا مِنَ الْكِتَابِ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْجِبْتِ وَالطَّاغُوتِ وَيَقُولُونَ لِلَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا هَؤُلَاءِ أَهْدَى مِنَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا سَبِيلًا. So, which, as we heard in the translation, this is refers to some of the people of the book, and they are utu nasiba min al-kitab. They received a portion of the book from the books before the Torah, the Injil, even though they received some of the wahy from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where they ought to follow it and to be obedient to Allah, but rather يؤمنون بالجبت والطاغوت. They believe in al-jibt والطاغوت. And al-jibt is either a sihr, as it's made the tafsir by some of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, or anything that is being worshipped besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or anything in general that is condemned and evil. So they believe in al-jibt wa taghut. And taghut is any thing that transgress the limits when it comes to be worshipped besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obeyed in the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or followed. So they believe in them. يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْجِبْتِ وَالطَّاغُوتِ. After they received the book, where the book clearly stated that they're obligated to worship none but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, to be upon the Tawheed and to stay away from shirk. But they still fell into these matters of shirk. وَيَقُولُونَ, and they say, لِلَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا, to the disbelievers, هَؤُلَاءِ أَهْدَى مِنَ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا سَبِيلًا. They would say to the disbelievers, those who worship the idols, that those who associate partners with Allah are more guided than the believers. And this is how the people, the Jews in Medina, they would say to the people of Quraysh about the Prophet ﷺ and the believers. And as we will see why he mentioned this verse and the one after related to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, as it will come, because the Prophet ﷺ, he made it very clear that some of this ummah would follow the same ways of the nations before. So if the nations before, some of them or all of them, in whatever nation that is, if they fell into the shirk, so some of the ummah would fall into that shirk. Any sin that has been committed in the nations before, you would have some of the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ commit that sin. Not the entire ummah, but some of them. Even if someone, wal-'iyadhu billah, as it's mentioned in some of the hadith, he committed zina with his mother, you would find someone in his ummah, even one person, at least one person, something like this, to show that the matter is going to happen as part of the qadr of Allah. But the difference between this ummah and the nations before is that the haqq, the truth, is contained in this ummah. And there's always going to be the truth present. And at times, even if it's less people upon the perfect truth, but it's still going to continue. And it doesn't mean also that if some commit sins, they become disbelievers. This is not the case. So, and part of them would fall into these major shirk that happened to the nations before. So this is basically what the verse refers to. And as we said, al-jibt wa taghut, which is the shahid here, the point of reference in the verse, with regards to these things worshipped besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the sihr and the shaitan and the asnam, as others, they made the tafsir of the word al-jibt. As Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, al-jibt is a sihr, and al-taghut is the shaitan. And Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu and others, they said al-jibt al-shaitan, and others said al-jibt is al-asnam, the idols that are being worshipped besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And all of that examples of the jibt. Examples of the jibt. Then the next ayah, وقوله تعالى قل هل أنبئكم بشر من ذلك مثوبة عند الله من لعنه الله وغضب عليه وجعل منهم القردة والخنازير وعبد الطاغوت.
Allah the Almighty said, say, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to the people of the scripture, Shall I inform you of something worse than that, regarding the recompense from Allah? Those Jews who incurred the curse of Allah and His wrath, those of whom some He transformed into monkeys and swines, those who worship Tawheed, false deities.
So the ayah in Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse number 60, that قُلْ هَلْ أُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِشَرٍّ مِّن ذَلِكَ مَثُوبَةً عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. There are those who afflicted upon themselves the evil, and as a result of that, they returned with the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cursed, and His anger is upon them, and He made from them قِرَدَةً وَخَنَازِيرَ. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punished them in this life, and they returned to the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter. The point the verse mentions here, وَعَبَدَ الطَّاغُوتِ, and that they worshipped At-Tawheed besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They worshipped it besides Allah, even though the pure message was given to them. But they differed among themselves, and they deviated, and they end up worshipping At-Tawheed, worshipping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether it's a shaitan, whether it's other than Allah. And that's why also, as mentioned before, anyone that worship other than Allah, in reality they are worshipping the shaitan, because that's the work of shaitan. Then after that, وقوله تعالى قال الذين غلبوا على أمرهم لنتخذن عليهم مسجدا.
Allah the Exalted said, those who won their point said, most probably the disbelievers, we verily shall build a place of worship over them.
And this is in Surah Al-Kahf, verse number 21. It's with regards to the story of the people of the cave. And you know the story. And then at the end, when they discovered their affairs, and this was a miraculous thing. So when they died, the ayah says, قَالَ الَّذِينَ غَلَبُوا عَلَى أَمْرِهِمْ لَنَتَّخِذَنَّ عَلَيْهِمْ مَسْجِدًا. So those who غَلَبُوا عَلى أَمْرِهِمْ, we'll talk as what that means. But they said, let's build on the graves or on top of these people of the Kahf when they died, a masjid, a place of worship. By the way, some of the people, they take this as an evidence it's okay to build masajid on top of the graves, because the ayah says that this has happened to the people of Al-Kahf. But قال الذين غلبوا على أمرهم. What is غلبوا على أمرهم? Al-ghalaba is when you become superior and you overpower someone. When you overpower someone, you become in charge of someone, you're oppressing someone. Al-ghalaba is the victory, is to be superior, and so on. So some said الذين غلبوا على أمرهم, as we heard in the translation, the disbelievers. And some said, and this is what Ibn Kathir and others, they give support to that opinion, is the umara, the hukam, the rulers at the time. So because غلبوا على أمرهم, they are the ones in charge. So they stated this, they made this in which they would build places of worship on top of the people of the cave. That in itself does not have any proof of anything, because it doesn't praise their action, it just says this is what happened. So this is the qadar of Allah, that this was decreed by the people of authority at that time, that they build a masjid on top of them. Which, as you see here also, that people saw the truth. The people of Al-Kahf, they were upon At-Tawheed, and this is what happened to them after they died. So the notion of that, some people think, once people are upon the Tawheed, there's no way this is going to change. That's not the case. But then what's the work of shaitan? What's the work of the evil that is present on the face of it? This life is a test. So when someone is upon the Tawheed, he has to guard his Tawheed. He has to be steadfast upon it, and or otherwise things can change. So this is as an evidence of that. Then the hadith, or the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the first one, he said ﷺ عن أبي سعيد رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لتتبعن سنن من كان قبلكم حذو القذة بالقذة حتى لو دخلوا جحر ضب لدخلتموه قالوا يا رسول الله اليهود والنصارى قال فمن يقول أخرجه.
Narrated Abu Sa'id radiallahu anhu that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, surely you will follow the ways of those nations who were before you, and everything as one arrow resembles another. An example, just like them. So much so that even if they entered a hole of a sand lizard, you would enter it. They said, O Allah's Messenger, do you mean to say that we will follow the Jews and the Christians? He replied, whom else? meaning, of course, the Jews and the Christians, Al-Bukhari and Muslim.
Now, so this hadith, as we heard, with relation to what's mentioned in the verses, to show that this is something that is going to happen in this ummah as a qadar of Allah. This is the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which, as we heard, لَتَتَّبِعُنَّ. And the word here is mentioned clearly that definitely, surely, this is going to happen, that you would follow سَنَنَ مَنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ. And sanana with the fatha like this means the way or the path. And it can be also read as sunan in the plural of sunnah, which is the tariqah, the way. But sanan with the fatha is one, and sunan is plural. So both are correct, and sanan refers to the path that they took. So you would follow sanana man kana qablakum, the path of those who before you. And la tattabi'unna does not refer to the entire ummah, but it means that this is going to happen in this ummah, that some would follow. La tattabi'unna sanana man kana qablakum, those who were before you. And then the Prophet ﷺ made it with the details that we heard. حذو القذة بالقذة. Hadwa is when you say, when حاذو, when you say when you straighten up the rows in the salah, حاذو بين المناكب والأقدام. That means make the shoulders to shoulder and the foot to foot. So حذو القذة بالقذة. القذة with the dhamma like this is the arrows that has the reach, the feathers on the end of it. So when they line them up, they make sure that they line up one after the other exactly. They're all exactly the same. When they have the arrows, not one fat arrow and one small arrow, they're all the same. So حذو القذة بالقذة, not just the arrow, but also the tip of it and how it's exactly the same. So to show that the following will be exactly the same as what they've done. حذو القذة بالقذة حتى, to the extent of which, and حتى refers to al-ghaya, to the end. Till even if they لو دخلوا, if they entered جحر ضب. Al-juhr is the hole in the ground, and al-dab is the sand lizard. So you see how it's tight and it's small. So even if they entered جحر ضب, the hole of a sand lizard, لدخلتموه, you would follow them in the same way. It's tight, it's ugly, it's not pleasant, but you still would follow them. You would refuse but to follow them. So it shows the details, right? And this is from the eloquent of speech, that instead of saying in this and this and this, and then you start counting things, people might think these are the only things that they will be followed in. No, the matter like this, when it's explained, that means in everything that they did, you would find some people, they would still insist to follow them in anything, in everything and everything that they've done. قالوا يا رسول الله, so they said, O Messenger of Allah, اليهود والنصارى, meaning what is meant by من كان قبلكم, those who before you. So they asked the Prophet ﷺ, the Jews and the Christians, he said, فَمَن, then who else? That means yes. The answer is فَمَن, that means who else? So this hadith is very, as a clear evidence that some of the ummah would follow. And again, to make sure that this does not mean the entire ummah. Some people would follow, and this is a reality, nobody can deny. You would find some of the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, they follow them in every matter. And that's why, as Sufyan ibn Uyayna, rahimahullah, when he said in Fath al-Majid, he quotes the statement, I believe here, that he said, yes, he says, من فسد من علمائنا ففيه شبه من اليهود ومن فسد من عبادنا ففيه شبه من النصارى. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, rahimahullah, he said, whoever is corrupted from our ulama, our people of knowledge, they have some resemblance, similarities with the Jews. And whoever is corrupted from our ubbad, people are busy with ibadah, things like this, but corrupted with bid'ah, with innovations, فَفِي شِبْهٌ مِّنَ النَّصَارَى, they have some similarities with the Christians. Because the Jews, they knew the truth, and they turned away from it, and the Christians, they don't know for the most part, and that's why they do what they do. So this is al-maghdubi alayhim and al-dallin. And to avoid the ways, that's why the final revelation from Allah shows these corruptions and these mistakes and the faults of what happened to the nations before. The followers of Musa alayhi salam, they were believers. The people of Bani Israel, the Jews followed truly Musa alayhi salam, they are believers, they are Muslimin, they enter the Jannah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly, and the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam clearly stated in the hadith, that the second largest ummah that will be in the Day of Judgment, the ummah of Musa alayhi salam, that he saw them sawadu min al-nas, very great ummah, the followers of Musa alayhi salam, and the same thing those who followed Isa alayhi salam upon the true message of Isa alayhi salam. But then the deviation happens afterwards, where they associated partners with Allah, worshipped other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, corrupted their religion, altering their religion, making the religion to fit everyone, worshipping the Tawheed, and all these types of things as we heard. So this is clear evidence that this is going to happen in the Ummah. Of course, there's actions to be as a result of that, because that's what the title. Why did he mention this chapter in the midst of all of what has been mentioned before? Because some of those who are upon some acts of shirk, the Quburiyun and the like of them, worshipping the graves and things like this, they quote some of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that the shirk is not going to happen in this ummah. Right? That لا أخاف عليكم الشرك. I don't fear for you to fall into shirk. There's some hadith like this. And there's the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, إن الشيطان قد أيس أن يعبده المصلون, that the shaitan gave up that he will be worshipped by the musallun, by the people, those who make salah. So they say that that's what the Prophet ﷺ said. So there's no shirk is going to happen to this ummah. And these ahadith, like the first one or the like of it, the ulama clearly stated, because there's no contradiction in the deen. One of which is Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, that hadith that I don't fear shirk to happen among you. He said this mean one of more than one thing. First thing is the Prophet ﷺ was addressing the Sahaba radiallahu anhu. So this is what refers to the Sahaba radiallahu anhu. The second thing is that when it comes to the entire ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, so this is also the Prophet ﷺ does not fear for that to happen to the ummah, because the other evidence is that some of the ummah would fall into the shirk and associating partners with Allah. And they clearly stated, even this hadith says this, but it's a reality that some of the ummah, they commit shirk. So you cannot deny this reality. So if a Muslim says La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, and he makes salah and so on, and then after that, it happens that they would worship idol afterwards, and they leave the deen of Islam and they make sujood to an idol. It happened before, and it happens. And there's even the hadith of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم لا تقوم الساعة حتى تضطرب اليد دوس على ذي الخلاصة, that the hour would not be established till the backs of the women of the Qabila or the tribe of Daus would move, because as a result of walking around the Dhul Khulasa, which is an idol. So this is a reality. This is the qadar of Allah, that this is going to be the case. So for people to deny it, this is wrong, and that's what these evidences are showing. But not the entire ummah, and that's why a person has to fear for himself and stay away from a shirk. And then he says, وَلِمُسْلِمٍ عَنْ ثَوْبَانٍ رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن الله زوى لي الأرض فرأيت مشارقها ومغاربها وإن أمتي سيبلغ ملكها ما زوى لي منها وأعطيت الكنزين الأحمر والأبيض وإني سألت ربي لأمتي ألا يهلكها بسنة بعامة وألا يسلط عليهم عدوا من سوى أنفسهم فيستبيح بيضتهم وإن ربي قال يا محمد إني إذا قضيت قضاء فإنه لا يرد وإني أعطيتك لأمتك ألا أهلكهم بسنة بعامة وألا أسلط عليهم عدوا من سوى أنفسهم فيستبيح بيضتهم ولو اجتمع عليهم من بأقطارها حتى يكون بعضهم يهلك بعضا ويسبي بعضهم بعضا. يقول رواه البرقاني في صحيحه. وزاد وإنما أخاف على أمتي الأئمة المضلين وإذا وقع عليهم السيف لم يرفع إلى يوم القيامة ولا تقوم الساعة حتى يلحق حي من أمتي بالمشركين وحتى تعبد وحتى تعبد فئام من أمتي الأوثان وأنه سيكون في أمتي كذابون 30 كلهم يزعم أنه نبي وأنا خاتم النبيين لا نبي بعدي ولا تزال طائفة من أمتي على الحق منصورة لا يضرهم من خذلهم ولا من خالفهم حتى يأتي أمر الله تبارك وتعالى. So this is the hadith. We hear the transition.
Muslim reports from Thawban radiallahu anhu that Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Allah the Most Exalted folded for me the earth, so much so that I saw its easts and wests, in example, the extremities. The kingdom of my community will reach as far as the earth was folded for me. The two treasures, the red, gold, and the white, silver, were bestowed on me. I prayed to my Lord that he may not destroy my community by a prevailing famine, and not give their control to an enemy who annihilates them en masse, except from among themselves. My Lord said to me, Muhammad, if I issue a decree, it is not withdrawn. I have promised your ummah that I will not destroy it by a prevailing famine, and I shall not give their control to an enemy, except from among themselves, who exterminates them en masse. Even if they are stormed from all sides of the earth, only a section of them will destroy another section, and a section will take as prisoner another section. I am afraid about my community of those astray leaders who will lead astray. When the sword is used among my people, it will not be withdrawn from them till the day of resurrection. And the last hour will not come until the tribes of my people attach themselves to the polytheists, and tribes of my people worship idols. There will be among my people 30 great liars, each of them asserting that he is a prophet, whereas I am the seal of the prophets, after whom, me, there will be no prophet. And a section of my people will continue to hold to the truth, and they will be victorious, and they will not be harmed by those who oppose them till Allah's command comes.
So you see this long hadith with different narrations, and it's an authentic hadith, talks about some of the signs of the hour and what's going to happen to this ummah and how it's related to the subject of the chapter. We'll go through it inshallah ta'ala, but focusing or just to make sure that we understand the part that is related to the chapter. But as we heard in the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Inna Allah zawa liya al-ard. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala zawa liya al-ard. And zawa liya al-ard, that means he made the earth right in front of me. And when you, the word zawa, when you يقال إذا زويت الشيء قبضته, for a human being, like if you have something like you have it in your hand, that means you can see it all. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the entire earth for the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam to see it. He saw the entire earth alayhi salatu wasalam. فرأيت مشارقها ومغاربها. I saw the east and the west. So he saw alayhi salatu wasalam the entire earth and what's going to be till the day of judgment. And the Prophet ﷺ informed the Sahaba of what's going to be till the day of judgment. And of course, there's great benefits in this for people to understand what's going to happen so that they know how to act as a result of this. And it's also from Alam al-Nubuwah, one of the signs of prophethood. When things happens, then it becomes very clear how the Wahy mentioned this. So, وَإِنَّ أُمَّتِي سَيَبْلُغُ مُلْكُهَا مَا زَوَى لِي مِنْهَا. And the mulk, the kingdom of my ummah, will reach what I've seen from the entire earth, which is the east and the west. And this is it the entire earth or the east and the west, and not necessarily the north and the south? Allah knows best, right? But this is what the Prophet ﷺ saw from the earth. وَأُعْطِيتُ, but at the end, of course, that's all times, the entire earth will be upon the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as far as the superiority is concerned. وأعطيت الكنزين الأحمر والأبيض, and I was given the two treasures, the red and the white. So what is the two treasures, the red and the white? Some had mentioned that this is the kingdom of the Persians, Kisra, and the kingdom of the Romans. That this is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam to the ummah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. وإني سألت ربي لأمتي ألا يهلكها بسنة بعام. That the Prophet ﷺ, he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to destroy the entire ummah with sana is like sinin ka sini Yusuf, the famine. Something, and bi'amma to means the entire ummah will be destroyed by a famine or something like this. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted the dua of the Prophet عليه الصلاة والسلام. وألا, the second one, وألا يسلط عليهم عدوا من سوى أنفسهم فيستبيح بيضتهم. And also I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not to, at-taslit is when someone sent against a nation or against people to kill them, to destroy them. So not to send from their enemies, that he would يستبيح بيضتهم, that he would be destroy their al-bayda is the core of things. That means to destroy them all. That means no enemies will extract the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ from the face of earth. It's not going to happen that the ummah will be completely destroyed. It is not going to happen. So this is basically what it means. وَإِنَّ رَبِّي قال, and my Lord said, يا محمد, O Muhammad, إني إذا قضيت قضاء فإنه لا يرد. If I decree a matter, qada, no one has the power, of course, to reject it. So the qadar of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to be established. وإني أعطيتك لأمتك ألا أهلكهم بسنة بعام. And I gave you for your ummah, that I would not destroy them by a famine that would take all of them, kill all of them. وألا أسلط عليهم عدوا من سوى أنفسهم فيستبيح بيضتهم. And I won't decree for your ummah that an enemy would come and remove them completely from the face of earth. ولو اجتمع عليهم من بأقطارها. Even if all of them, every single person on the face of earth, من بأقطارها, at all places on the earth, if they all get together to remove you from the face of earth, they won't be able to do it. So this is the decree of Allah, the qadar of Allah. No one will have that ability whatsoever. And if they plan and they plot, it's never going to happen. حتى يكون, but then حتى يكون بعضهم يهلك بعضا ويسبي بعضهم بعضا. But what's going to happen, it's going to be within the ummah itself. They kill one another, some, and they take captures of war to one another. Not the entire ummah, but this is going to happen as groups, and this is how things since after the Prophet ﷺ, especially when the Sayf, which is mentioned later. So, but not the entire ummah. And then in another narration, وَإِنَّمَا أَخَافُ عَلَى أُمَّتِي الْأَئِمَّةِ الْمُضِلِّينَ. So to differentiate between the qadar of Allah. No one can push away the qadar of Allah. And this life is not meant to be the Jannah. The Jannah is in hereafter. This life is a test and a trial. And people are tested with one another. So this is not the place to fulfill all the desires and the dreams and things like this, but rather to be firm upon what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed upon the person, to be patient with matters of the deen, whether it's times of ease, times of difficulty. And if things happens and fitan, it doesn't mean that the deen is going to vanish, or as mentioned before, the deen of Islam is always victorious. No one can defeat it whatsoever. Individuals, yes, times they are weak, sometimes they are strong, but the deen of Islam, no one will be able to remove it whatsoever from the face of earth, the purity of the deen also. Then that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he said, وَإِنَّمَا أَخَافُ عَلَى أُمَّتِي الْأَئِمَّةَ الْمُضِلِّينَ. Then indeed, what I fear from my ummah, since this what's mentioned before is the qadar of Allah, I fear for them al-a'imma al-mudillin. Al-a'imma is the plural of imam. Al-mudillin, the deviant leaders. So whether the authorities or whether the religious leaders, those who would deviate. Because people usually follow those who are in places of authority or places of religious authority. So this is the real fear. Why? Because they would deviate a group of them from the truth. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ, he did not say al-a'imma, al-a'imma al-mudillin, the deviant ones, because the haqq is clear. إنما أخاف على أمتي الأئمة المضلين. وإذا وقع عليهم السيف لم يرفع إلى يوم القيامة. And if the sword gets down onto my ummah, is not going to be lifted till the day of judgment. And this has happened at the time of Uthman radiallahu anhu. So since that time, the sayf, the sword, is going to be present. Sometimes it's much, sometimes it's less. But the fitan, the wars, things of that nature. ولا تقوم الساعة حتى يلحق حي, and this is where the shahid, why the hadith is here. ولا تقوم الساعة, the hour is not going to be established. حتى يلحق حي من أمتي بالمشركين, till حي, a group of my ummah, will يلحق, will join to the mushrikeen, will be part going to the mushrikeen. And this part is either physically, a group of the ummah will go and live with the mushrikeen and approve the way of living of the mushrikeen and be like the mushrikeen, or in their actions and their shirk, because it's mentioned the mushrikeen, they would fall into the shirk of the mushrikeen, as the ulama they mentioned, which both are correct meanings. حتى يلحق حي من أمتي بالمشركين وحتى تعبد فئام من أمتي الأوثان. Until, meaning the hour is not going to be established, till a group of my ummah will, and this is فئام, الفئام الجماعات من الناس, the groups of people, not one group but groups, would worship الأوثان, would worship the idols. وحتى تعبد فئام من أمتي الأوثان. So the statement is very clear that some would worship the idols besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وأنه سيكون في أمتي كذابون ثلاثون كلهم يزعموا أنه نبي. And there will be in my ummah 30 liars, each one of them claim to be a prophet. So the false prophets, those who came after the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ, there are 30. And that, of course, is also a very clear matter. People were upon the deen, and then someone comes and he claimed to be a prophet. Qadiani is this and that, and even after the Prophet ﷺ. وَأَنَا خَاتَمُ النَّبِيِّينَ لَا نَبِيَّ بَعْدِي. And I'm the seal of the prophets. There is no prophet after me. No prophet before the Prophet ﷺ said that statement. And no one can ever prove this. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he was sent, he said, أَنَا خَاتَمُ النَّبِيِّينَ. No more prophets to come. So anyone, which again, this is the clarity of the deen. So no one is, if anyone claimed to be a prophet, he's a liar, because the Prophet ﷺ is Khatamun Nabiyyin, and the message is perfected, and that's why he's Khatamun Nabiyyin. La Nabiyya Ba'di. There's no prophet after me. Even when Isa alayhi he comes down at the end of time, he would not come down as a prophet with a new religion. He comes as a follower of the message of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, because it's all the message from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. لا نبي بعدي ولا تزال طائفة من أمتي. And there's always going to be. لا تزال, that means it's a continuous thing, never going to vanish. A group, طائفة من أمتي, from my ummah. على الحق منصورة. Upon the truth, منصورة, victorious. Upon the truth. لا يضرهم من خذلهم. It doesn't harm them, those who let them down. So they are firm upon the haqq, they are firm upon the truth. It doesn't matter who is letting them down, those who turn away from them. وَلَا مَنْ خَلَفَهُم. And it doesn't harm them whatsoever, those who differ against them and they're not upon the same way that they're upon. Till حتى يأتي أمر الله تبارك وتعالى, till the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes, and whether the victory from Allah for the entire ummah or the day of judgment. So there is always going to be group of the ummah upon the haqq. So that means the haqq is going to continue to be on the face of earth, and this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala preserved this deen. The nations before, they cannot even go back to see what the truth that was revealed. It's only in the ummah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. So if there's any haqq in this life, it's only in the ummah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and praising those who are upon that haqq, and to prepare oneself that it's not upon the haqq is not based on the majority or based on emotions or based on these people or the other people. It's based on the haqq, the wahy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed, and there's always going to be a group of people upon this. But the point of reference here in the hadith, وَحَتَّى تَعْبُدَ فِئَامٌ مِّنْ أُمَّتِي الْأَوْثَانِ. A group of the people would worship al-awthan, or the idols, وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. So as a result of that, as we would see in the benefits, inshallah ta'ala, so it's very important to remember this, to make it clear that those who claim that it's not going to happen, and why they say that it's not going to happen, so that it would give them the rukhsa, or the permissibility for them to worship other than Allah. They go to the graves and they worship these graves and they call them besides Allah, and they say, we say La ilaha illallah. And how can you say that this is shirk? You're calling us mushrikeen when we say La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. The shirk is not going to happen in this ummah. No, the hadith and the ayat refutes this. And whoever falls into shirk, that means they are falling into shirk. And they need to repent to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from associating partners with Allah. The fawaid, clearly, quickly inshallah, the tafsir of the three verses as we heard. And number 4, وهي أهمها, the most important benefit here ما معنى الإيمان بالجبت والطاغوت. What is the meaning of to believe in الجبت والطاغوت in that place, which is, as he says, هل هو اعتقاد قلب أم هو موافقة أصحابها مع بغضها ومعرفة بطلانها. Is it the belief in the heart, or it's confirming with those who are upon it, while a person hates it and he knows that it's falsehood. So this is basically they worshipping other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, believing in it. So that's how they did. And then إن الكفار الذين يعرفون كفرهم أهدى سبيلا من المؤمنين. That the disbelievers, those who know their kufr, this is their statement, because they say in the ayah أهدى من الذين آمنوا سبيلا, that they say that the disbelievers, those who know that they are disbelievers, are more guided than the believers. And then what's meant by the title of the chapter, أن هذا لابد أن يوجد. This has to happen in this ummah, as it's stated in the hadith of Abi Sa'id and others. تصريح بوقوعها أعني عبادة الأوثان, that the worship of the idols is going to happen in this ummah. Then العجب العجاب, the most strange thing or amazing thing is خروج من يدعي النبوة, those who claim to be prophets, like the Mukhtar, when he even states لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله. Some of these false prophets, as they claim, they would say لا إله إلا الله محمد رسول الله, and they would claim that they are part of the ummah, and that the messenger is the truth and the Quran is haqq, and in it, in the Quran and in the Sunnah, that the Prophet ﷺ is the seal of the prophets, and still some of them would claim to be prophets. So it shows that this is how the opposites are there, and this is happened even at the end time of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum. And some people, they followed him. The one afterwards is al-bishara bi anna al-haqq la yazul. The glad tidings, the good news is the haqq is not going to vanish from the face of earth, as it happened to the nations before. So these types of hadith does not bring sadness in the heart, but rather to witness the qadr of Allah and to prepare oneself to be always upon the truth. The great sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this ta'ifa, this group of people upon the truth, even though they might be less in number at some times, but nothing harmed them when it comes for them holding fast to the truth. And ذلك الشرط إلى قيام الساعة, that this is all the way till the hour is established. And also what's in the great signs that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned from the signs of the hour, that the Prophet ﷺ, he says, he takes here that he saw the mashariq wal magharib, the east and the west. And he said, this is exactly what happened, which is different than the north and the south. This is what he takes here. And the Prophet ﷺ was given the two treasures, the treasures of the Persians and the Romans, after the Prophet ﷺ. And the acceptance of the dua of the Prophet ﷺ in the first thing, in the first two things, and the third one, no, which is they would fight with one another. And the sayf, the sword, will be established or present in this ummah where the fitan is. And some of them would destroy one another, some of them would fight against one another. And the fear that he had, alayhi salatu wassalam, from the A'imma al-Mudillin, and even though they are present, still there will be the Ta'ifa al-Mansura, those who are upon the haqq, the truth, that nothing will harm them whatsoever. And he says here, حصر الخوف على أمتي المضلين, إنما, it gives the meaning of al-hasr, this exclusiveness, that this is what the Prophet ﷺ feared the most. And التنبيه على منع عبادة الأوثان, and what's mentioned about worshipping al-awthan or idols besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is basically the end of the chapter. So as we hear here, the great benefit for us to learn that this is part of the qadr of Allah, explains how things are, and there are evil on the face of earth, and this is how life is. And what matters is for the person to hold fast to the haqq at times when people see these things happening, and to refer always to the truth, which the ways that was present at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, the Tabi'een, the early generations of Islam. Because we know for sure that Allah praised them. And this is something we have to constantly repeat, and not to listen to these things that takes the person away from the ways of the early generations of Islam, even if it's against to what you think based on reason and based on this. and to follow that and to hope and to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for steadfastness. جزاكم الله خيرا. بارك الله فيكم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك.